Is theirs a 2-night as well, or is it all for?
It's all three for at least JD2. I don't know how much they're going to push the others. And then there's the all-parent meeting Thursday night. Would you guys have your all-parent meeting?
People said really nice things. I remember we even did up and said, hey, I'm going to start by saying something nice. So that was really kind. So we're giving you that opportunity, and then later if you have questions on
Then you gotta get varsity.
Yes.
But at least now Alex, as of last week, before has his own license. So he can just, I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that'll be nice.
Oh, yes, it is.
That's outside of just make it later. Because don't post it kind of early when you're in conversation.
Yeah, we used to have a track to talk about like, oh, you're gonna be gone for deer camp. And Michelle would say, just letting you know, it's all above board. Literally.
It's usually until whatever it is resolved.
That's right, that's my work login.
It's not.
Is that
Not what I thought your hair was.
so it's not a meeting with these
For the annual?
We have 5.
Thank you. Chris and Matt, we're
We are
officially
live.
live now. Just to let you know.
Odell's is big.
It's always
I still like to touch the feature.
Biggest I
Just here to listen.
What's the trick here? Do I not turn it on?
It's really great. Priority. Not at all. Okay.
Are you right-handed?
Sided, right-handed.
Okay,
sided
good.
program.
Good, nope. It'd only be problematic if we both.
Come through the neighborhood. Chris, let me know when you're ready.
I can be ready. I got it.
Give me 1 second, I need to get on talk. Why am I not getting? Do we have public comment sheet? I'm just waiting since it's right at the beginning. right, call to order at 5:34. Yeah. Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Proof of giving public notice.
Notice was given.
Okay. We're moving right into public comments. As a reminder, there is a 3-minute time limit. Please do not address board members directly, and you are allowed to comment on anything. Okay. Val.
Oh, I was confused. I clarified with Superintendent Volkman.
Is this for a regular board meeting?
Yes.
Okay. I'll just make a note in. Okay. Darcy?
Hi.
Yes, I'm not sure I'm saying I needed, but I was thinking we were gonna be talking about stuff first, so,
Yeah, because there was going to be a dialogue. during-
Yeah, there's another segment of
During
the budget.
comments. Okay, so you want to do what Val's doing? Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
Sure, no problem.
I know, I'm confused.
I just think there was some confusion because the annual meeting's an open meeting for back and forth,
No, we're not doing back and forth.
but it's an open, anyway, we'll get to that.
All right, well, anyone who signed up for public comment intend for this time to be speaking. It's all for regular board meeting? Okay. All right, well, I'm gonna declare this meeting official. So what we're gonna do next is elect a chairperson to run the meeting. It's up to you guys to nominate someone. There will be a second, and then we will vote. Our plan for all voting tonight is by hand. If the chairperson decides they would prefer to do it by ballot, we do have ballots, but we felt like hand just was efficient and would move us faster. Our new board secretary, Gretchen, will be the person who's counting and tallying, so. So anyone can make a motion to nominate a person that they want to run the rest of the meeting. Chris is going to be our parliamentary guy, so if the chair is doing something outside of kind of our parliamentary protocol, he's gonna step in and just help guide you guys. Okay?
I make a motion that Tiffany Hawley is the chairperson.
I second.
Okay. All in favor?
Who seconded? I'm sorry.
Ben,
And Sawchuk.
sorry.
I'll give the spelling for the last name later. I always screw it up.
S-O-B-C-Z-A-K.
Say it again.
S-O-B-C-Z-A-K.
Thank you.
Okay, so all in favor? Yay?
Board minutes. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yes, 20.
Nay?
Gretchen, I was typing. Do you have the official count? How many yeses?
20.
20? Thank you. Good.
Okay, so Chris will remain our clerk. I'm gonna introduce Board of Education and members of admin now. So we can just start with Chris, and if you guys just wanna go down the line and introduce yourself.
This Chris or that Chris?
You.
I'm gonna stand just because you guys can see. I apologize for having a screen up, but trying to keep notes and look at documents at the same time is really difficult. So I've been using a separate monitor. Chris Adsit, I'm the board clerk and second year here.
I'm Matt Schwab, Chair of the Finance Committee, is that the right term? This is my first annual meeting as a member of the board.
Tiffany Hawley, president, going on my 3rd year.
Hi, Amy Harker Murray, going on my 2nd year.
Chris Hagland, VP, going on 1st year.
Tina Vogelman, superintendent, 2nd year.
Amy Holly, Director of Business Services and Human Resources, going into my 3rd year.
Gretchen Steinberger, 4 weeks in.
Okay, Tina, I'll hand it over to you.
Excellent, yes. So rather than doing 2 lengthy presentations, I have a secondary one that we will be doing during the regular board meeting, so stay tuned. But just wanted to just say it's been a great year. We had a really exciting time with some big group things district-wide, which included the Eclipse, which was an outstanding activity and a lot of fun. You will notice some really great improvements across the district as you start coming into the building. Specifically, we have the library work that was done over the summer. That grand opening is at 11 o'clock on the 27th, so please join us at North. We got some parking lot work done over at North. We have our logo and branding is really spread out across the entire district. You should notice that on flagpoles and when you walk indoors. Greg has done a great job. North also got a new gym floor. South got some new carpeting areas. And we're just doing some really neat, fun things. This next year, we're gonna highly focus on strategic planning. So we've got already kind of a schedule where I will be doing Tina Talks rather than TED Talks every month. So I will do some during the day and some at night. Those will be directed, so you'll have a parking lot where you can add your topics that you'd like to discuss. And it's just us sitting in a room having a conversation. Trying to get to know each other, get to understand what your needs are and what our objectives are in the schools. And then we will build out the vision and mission and the strategic plan through surveys, through workshops and regular board meetings. So you'll see that every month. We will be doing workshops and regular board meetings and then bringing in some requests and information from the community to kind of create our strategic plan as we go forward. So really excited about a lot of the really great work that we're doing and the things that are happening here at Hartland-Lakeside. So with that's pretty much where we're at.
Okay. All right, so we are moving on to new business, budget hearing. Turn it over to Amy.
So one of the things that we're working on as a district is that we're doing a book study at this time. And in that book study, there were 3 things in the most recent chapter that we read, and it was the why, what, and how. So I decided to incorporate that this year to why we're all here. And of course, it starts with this, oh, I'm sorry guys. It starts with the students. But there's other whys, of course, too. We want to follow our mission, which is to provide a diverse and dynamic education program. Our staff, because we have an incredible staff that is teaching those students. And then our community partnerships. We couldn't do this without the support of the community, which is why I'm assuming all of you are here tonight. So the what? What are we doing here tonight? We're going to talk about the school budget. The school budget is just a financial outline for how the school district is going to best support that educational plan for the year. The school budget is obviously a best estimate at this time. That makes up, it does not actually account for everything because we can't foresee everything. So it is unfortunately our best guess at this particular time. But the school board, as you may know, will do a final budget approval in October, which is when the tax levy is approved and when the final budget is approved. So when we're looking at the budget, as we start that planning process, these are some of the things that we consider. Obviously, always the district mission and the educational plan put forward by the board and administration. We review all of those data sources. So we're looking at our total enrollment, our class sizes, class selection, that's more at the middle school level, and then our revenue sources, because we need to support those things. And then of course we want to ensure that all of those resources, which is our staff, curriculum, materials, etc., are being allocated to best support student learning. So what is the budget hearing? So prior to the budget hearing, the school board must approve a proposed preliminary budget, which is what you're going to see tonight. That was actually approved in May of this year, so that is the information that I'm able to present to you now. It does require that we hold this meeting so that residents have a chance to be heard on the proposed budget. But the intent for the budget hearing is for an expression of public opinion, but to leave the school board free to act at a future meeting, which is that October meeting, as it determines to be in the best interest of the public. So, as you may have seen, and it's in the packet, this is the budget that was brought forward or approved as a preliminary budget at this time. I did just hide the 2 columns because we're looking at 24-25, but in your handout you have a 3-year comparison. So looking at the budget for this, this is looking at the general fund, which is Fund 10. Right now at the top, you can see the beginning fund balance. And right now, because it's a balanced budget, it is ending the same way. The fund balance that we hold at this time is about 32% of our operating expenses, which is great. This is a positive sign for the district and allows the district to respond to non-recurring economical needs in the unforeseen future. As you can see, at this time and when the budget was approved, it is balanced for Fund 10. So general fund is usually just the general education pieces. I also have in the handout the notes for what the revenue source breakdowns are and the instruction. So if you have any questions on that budget piece, please refer to that page. Special project funds, that is Fund 20. So for us, that would be Fund 21, which is our donation accounts, and then Fund 27, which is our special education. The beginning fund balance that you see is only for Fund 21 because we can have a balance in that account. Fund 27 has to balance each month, and obviously at the end of the year. So there will never be any special education funds that have a fund balance. So again, you see that there's a balance in there. Most of that is special education, just so you know. Because again, that has to be, we don't budget for Fund 21 because that is donations and activities, special projects, student activity counts, things of that nature, and we don't know what that's going to look like for those clubs. Happy to report debt service, the district doesn't have any, so you will see that as 0. And then capital projects, which is Fund 40, that's for any facility improvement in the future. So we are working on updating a 10-year plan. Greg and I are also newer to the district, so we did some walkthroughs over the summer looking at the buildings, and we're going to update that plan and present that to the board at a future meeting. So at this time for the capital project fund, the beginning fund balance is just what's in that savings account as of the end of June. We are proposing again at this time, as we did last year, to budget $250,000 to be transferred to that account. Food service is Fund 50. This is strictly for basically our third-party vendor to come in and provide those services for us. The revenue that comes in is from families as well as state and federal grants. We are allowed to have 6 months of fund balance in Fund 50. Once we reach over that amount, TPI does send us a letter asking us nicely to spend down those funds. Those funds can only be spent on food service. So over the last year, we purchased a new dishwasher, a new freezer, things of that nature. And lastly, a community service fund, that is Fund 80, but for us it's Fund 81. That is just our daycare services right now. And at this time, her budget also balances and it is self-sufficient. So all of the money she brings in for before and after school care as well as childcare goes right back into her program, and the district does not fund that in any possible way through tax levy. And then this just shows the total expenditures. So our budget is just over 20 million. You do see that interfund transfer. That is the amount that we have to take from Fund 10 to Fund 27 at this time to fully support that program. So if you take that out, the total net Expenditures is just about 18.5 million. And the percent increase from last year is under 1%. So how are we going to fund this budget? Of course, that beautiful revenue limit formula. So I wanted to share this with you so you know how we're coming to that number. So the resident membership, which is FTE, full-time equivalent, is a 3-year rolling average. When September school starts, the third Friday, we'll do a student count, which is the first number. We also get to take 40% of our summer school enrollment. Again, it's based on the number of weeks and things, but the state allows 40%. And then any new independent charter schools, which is kind of funny because they just take that money right back, but we get to count them in our resident membership number. For 24-25, as you may recall from last year, they did increase the low revenue ceiling limit from 10,000 to 11,000, and then the state also gave us an additional $325. So right now for 24-25, our reimbursement per pupil will be $11,339. At this time, we were looking at some potential declining enrollment. So the budget, when I was building it, I do have a hold harmless and declining enrollment exemption in there. But again, that was our projections before this new school year. But all of that information is where it gets us to the revenue limit authority, which is the total amount that we are able to, spend between tax levy and state funds. So our enrollment projections, the history, as you can see, the district was looking at a decline potentially for this year, specifically in our 4K, but we are seeing that in other school districts as well. We did ask others if that was something they were experiencing, and it was. But I also wanted to throw this in there that there's declining enrollment at about 78% of school districts in the state of Wisconsin. So we are not alone in that fact. So when we go back to that formula, that revenue limit is that total amount, which is about $13.5 million. From that number, we have to take out what the state is telling us they will give us. So right now, the state said equalization aid, based on their July 1st estimate, would be approximately $4.9 million. We always get a small amount for computer aid, which is just over $84,000, and then our personal property, which is about $19,500. When you take those out of that number, that's where I get the revenue limit levy, which is what we can ask the community to support, which at this time is $8.4 million. So looking at our tax levy estimate, I do have the historic information for the last 3 years here for you. You can see that our mill rate went down 2 cents from 22 to 23. Last year it was $3.34, and right now this year it's looking like it's going to be $3.34 as well. This was just a fun graphic, but it's so that you can see where our money kind of is being spent. 53% of our revenue comes in from property taxes, so thank you. 6.6 is inter-district transfers, so that is those open enroll in. So they're coming to our school district, so we get 6.6% of our funding that way. 37.3 is from state sources. Then 1.5 is from federal, and then 1.6 is other. So that would be school fees, things of that nature. Things that are going to change between this presentation in October is that I'll actually have a student count, yay, the third Friday in September. We will also know the equalized value from the state. That is out on October 1st. Then we will find out on October 15th what the state is going to give us an equalization aid. So then that meeting in October, which is close to the end of October, that is when we will be able to approve the final tax levy and the final budget. So there's a lot of information between now and then that will change what that budget looks like. Thank you for attending. Are there any questions? You can just raise hand, shout out, whatever works.
percentage of the salary, what percentage of the budget is going towards salary and benefits?
We're probably sitting between 70-75% right now. Most of our budget is for our staff, which is why they're such a huge part of why this is important.
Right, and then what is, you had referenced like a certain percentage of our revenue is from open enrollment in. How much are we losing from open enrollment out?
I don't have a final number on that. That will again come through in September. We are negatively funded in open enrollment and we have been for years, but we are working on trying to fix that.
Do you have any kind of numbers of how many students are open enrolling, relatively percentage, out to other school districts, like other feeder schools versus using vouchers to go to private schools? Do you have that?
That information we don't have, but that is something that we're looking at doing. We're actually going to have in our district office a meeting regarding that because that's not something we haven't looked at before, but that is something we want to look at in the future. Because if we can find out why people are leaving the district, it will help us with marketing and trying to keep them in the district.
Right, right. So talking about Fund 40 and the capital projects, I know when that fund, when school districts were originally allowed to create that fund, they had to create like a 5 to 10 year plan. So are you guys not working off that plan at all?
No, that's the plan we've been working off of, but because it was created by previous buildings and grounds, so before I started, there were two within 2 years, somebody who had been here a long time and somebody who had been here a short time. So Greg and I are just reevaluating that plan, but that's how we've been working on the parking lots and things, is based on what that person had put in. But I know there's other things that we need to look at and that's why we're just reevaluating.
Right. So with the, in regards to community fund, in the past, some of that money that was levied actually went towards the community, help paying for the parade or the fireworks or books at the library or programs in conjunction with the village. So is the Fund 81 now solely just being used to fund the daycare? Like what kind of projects are you funding the community with?
Well, Fund 80, when we had that in the past, there was an additional tax to the community. So last year, we decided that we weren't gonna take that. There was like an extra $150,000. And it was actually being used for our district coordinator to work with the community as well as our IT. And there were some other things that had been in there in the past, and a previous business manager said that actually was not a great way to use those funds, and that's why we got rid of that, because it was taxed above the tax limit.
Right. So looking at your comparison sheet, there's a big drop in the amount of federal funds we're receiving.
Yes.
Can you explain?
Yes, that is ESSER. So we had about $600,000 that we had to spend last year. I was able to transfer some of that into this year because we're allowed to use it through September 30th. So there was a couple things that you'll see that will be adjusted for that, but most of that is those ESSER funds that just are done as of this past year.
How much of a surplus did you have with the last budget? That ended up an unlimited budget. Was there a surplus at the end?
There was a surplus, yes, about $500,000.
$500,000, and where did you put those?
That goes to fund balance.
You put it in Fund 10 instead of reallocating it to something else?
We did a transfer to the capital improvement of $250,000 and then we left the rest in fund balance.
Oh, so last year you didn't budget any funds for the capital improvement?
We did, but the board just approved that last month because we have to do it before the end of July. So that was budgeted, but we still ended up with a fund balance.
So what was the original budget for the Fund 40?
The original budget was the $250,000.
So I guess I'm confused. So you had a balance of $500,000 at the end of the school year, and you had already budgeted $250,000, but you used that surplus of $500,000 to fund the $250,000?
No, so there's a total surplus. So when the monthly financials, and I'll do a presentation obviously in the regular board meeting. So it's $500,000, like is all the funds together.
Okay.
So even when I do that transfer of $250,000, it's still in that $500,000. So if you're asking for Fund 10, there's a fund balance of $300,000.
Okay, so So the 250 that you had originally planned last year and this year was part of that 500,000 that was, because you didn't spend it.
Right.
So in actual, you had excess of 250,000. That went in your budget.
Total excess would be 500,000. The 250 was budgeted, but like I said, because it just goes between funds, it's like a washout.
Okay. The slide went by pretty quick. What's the mill rate for this year?
334, which is the same as last year.
I'm not sure where to stand with the camera, so I
And then how much is in the whole harmless account for your
I don't have that number off the top of my head. At this time,
I don't know if I can.
our enrollment is looking better, so I don't know that we'll have that, but at the time, we were anticipating a decline, so
roughly?
133, 135, somewhere along that, yeah.
What kind of cuts did you have to make this year for the balanced budget? Did you lose any staff?
We didn't do any cuts, so if we looked at when people resigned, if we needed that position or not, based on current enrollment. So there was no staff cut, it was just based on class sizes, enrollments, things like that.
So how many staff either retired or resigned?
We had one retirement that we did replace, and then we had one resignation, which was a part-time person that we did not fill.
And then I guess I understand, the whole concept of this is our vote on the budget is essentially a recommendation. But I think I've expressed my concern to a couple of board members as well as the administration. I'd like to know when you presented that final budget in October, when was the decision made and by whom that you wouldn't be taxing to the maximum authority? Because everyone, the majority, overwhelming majority in the room, the board, said, yes, when you present that final budget, just to let you know, we have given you the go-ahead to tax the maximum authority. And then that newsletter came out saying that you under-levied by 200,000. So at that meeting where you presented the budget that was the final tax levy that you voted on, where did that budget come from? Was it discussed in a board meeting? Because I didn't see any meetings that it was discussed. Was it discussed in a finance meeting? Was it discussed by board members behind closed doors? Was it something that you just decided to bring to the board? And if that was the case, did you also bring a budget at that same time that taxed to the max? I feel by not following, there's a lot of people in this room, and we're all giving up our Monday nights, and some of us have babysitters, not me, unfortunately, my kids are too old. But, I feel that our voice should have been noted and recognized, and I feel that built a lot of lack of trust. I can't speak for everyone, but for me, I'm still mad, we all voted. This is what we said. Who made that decision? How did it happen? Talk me through when we had that board meeting where we all voted to tax to the max, and when the board, who can fill me in on what happened?
Sure. Well, here, I'll go back. So last year we did this in August. So the same information applies. I don't have all the numbers that I need. Sorry, it's closer than I realized. So between August and October, this information comes in.
Right.
I adjust the budget based on this information. And at that time, knowing that I had ESSER funds and all of these things already that I had to spend down, it presented an opportunity that I did not have to tax to the full authority.
So did you clear that by the treasurer at the time?
Well, we presented to the full board.
But wouldn't that be a conversation between you and the treasurer, not something that you, who is not a resident, decides on your own?
So I didn't decide on my own. So we are talking budget. So when I talk to administration, and that's how we build the budget. Like, we start internally. I present a budget to the board and give them the information that we have, like I'm doing right now for the community and the board again.
So and I totally understand that. So at that October meeting, did you have two budgets to present? Here's the one that I think is what we need, but considering everyone said that tax to the max. Did you come prepared with the second budget? Or did you just come prepared with that one budget that you felt was all we needed?
Well, I presented the budget that balanced.
Right, but did you have two,
Well, the board at that time could say to me, and they have full authority to do that. If they want me to tax to the full authority, they can say, Amy, you know what? The community said we want to tax to the full authority. We want that extra 200,000. We'll have another special board meeting and we'll call everyone back.
So your plan was that if the board wanted to follow what the community said, there would have been another board meeting, as opposed to, right?
Well, that's how.
Sorry, I was treasurer at the time, so I feel like I can speak to this. So when we talked about the board at the finance committee, I don't think I tuned into the fact that it wasn't a tax to the max, okay? And I don't remember if it was in the finance committee meeting or in the October general meeting where that point was made.
I know, Amy, I've watched the October meeting, and
Okay.
Amy did mention that this was not taxing to the max.
Right. And so I'd have to, we don't have the finance committee meetings videotaped or recorded, so we'd have to take a look at notes, and I could take a look at my notes that I took. I don't remember if I clued into that. We were presented with one budget. So I don't know how aware the rest of the board was at the time that we weren't really taxing to the max and that there was another
So
option.
nobody took a beat and said, oh, this is not what the community and the board voted on. Like that, it doesn't seem like it was even a conscious decision. It was just like, not even thought was given.
All I can say is for myself is I didn't clue into that piece until afterwards. So I'll take full blame for that part on myself, that I didn't clue into that until after the fact. I think at the time afterwards, when it was brought to my attention, Amy and I talked about it at a finance meeting. And she said her goal was to try and build a balanced budget that was also being financially prudent. And it was seen as a positive thing historically from other districts that she's worked at to not tax to the max if you don't have to. Being new to all of this, I know more now than I did a year ago, which is always a good thing. And now if we had the ability to tax to the max, where we didn't have to, like this upcoming year's budget that Amy just presented, I think I would advocate more for it because now I know we can roll that extra over into the fund budget or something else.
Right, for when you have to go to referendum, because the first question everyone asks is,
Yeah.
what have you been doing to save up money for
Yeah.
this big purchase?
And as treasurer, that's my take on it, and I'll take full blame for not asking more questions about it, and it's part of the learning curve. I can only speak for myself, not for the rest of the board at the time.
So also my understanding with how school finance works, and so in the past, if we did not levy to the maximum amount allowed, we were penalized, right? That they said, well, if you don't need that money this year, then you don't need it next year, and it affected our formula and how much we could levy the next year and for a few years out. So how has our budget been affected by not taxing to the maximum?
Well, as you can see, it hasn't been affected at all. So I'm not sure where that comes from, but that is not an impact for the future.
Last question, and then I'll let anyone else ask questions, sorry, is, so given the situation, right, this meeting, it sounds like you guys are planning on taxing to the maximum authority. If the community voted that, no, we didn't want to tax to the max, in October, you could present a budget that was still taxing to the max, and you could do whatever you want regardless of what the community input was.
Well, that is, as I showed in that one slide, it is up to the board. So the board at that time can decide what they want to do. They can listen to the community from the group here, or they can look at the budget and see what the need is of the district and decide it another way. The board always has the final decision with budget and tax levy.
Can I ask the other board members that were on the board at that time, so Chris and Tiffany, were you fully aware that you were not paying attention to the 30 people that were in the room and decided not to tax the maximum authority?
I can speak to that. Amy made it very clear last year that the budget was presented to be balanced and that it wasn't to the full authority and that there wasn't a need to do that at the time. And I agreed with that. I liked that and didn't feel the need to tax to the full authority.
And I was looking for the minutes from last year's annual meeting, and they're not on the website. Do you recall at the annual meeting how you voted? My recollection was, I think the board voted in favor of taxing to the maximum. Even though she had presented.
You are correct, it was a preliminary meeting. I don't remember how I personally voted. I think I went along with it at that time, knowing that the full budget and the full picture would be presented after we received all the numbers.
How about you, Tim?
Yep, same thing. And if I recall, the October meeting where we approved the final levy, there was little to no community here. So I don't understand why if you're this invested, you would not come to that final meeting for that final vote. Because it was done in public.
I guess we thought our vote.
Yeah, that's
We thought we had given, this is the meeting,
This is the only meeting we have to say.
Yeah, so we can actually
Where we
speak
can
to it,
actually
and we did.
Right,
You,
but it's finalized and the board has the final say so.
And so
that
what
happens in
what-
October.
So what changed between your vote to do it and your vote not to? Can you tell me what changed? I'm asking you guys, what changed?
for me, it was being presented with the full facts.
What do you mean by that?
Look on the screen, Gary.
Those words changed your mind.
These words are what you are presented with in September and then October. September, you get the final counts, and then by October, Amy can present the real numbers, not projected.
Right, so that's what I'm asking. What happened between the August meeting and October? You talk about an actual September count. Was it higher? Was it lower? Was it not
That I
changed?
don't remember.
Okay, so you don't, right, okay.
Yeah, how much did the budget change from what you presented at this meeting last year and then what you presented in October? Did you present roughly the same budget? Like
I don't know the numbers for last year at this time, sorry, I don't have that in front of me, so I can't speak to that. Because the budget hearing should be about the budget moving forward, but I'm happy to answer the questions that I can, but I don't have those numbers in front of me because that's not what I'm presenting.
I do just want to clarify, I totally get what you were saying, Stephanie, about the October meeting, but the one thing that I will note is that community comment comes before the board takes up issues. So because the community would not necessarily have known that it wasn't gonna happen, like, I think what Val and Garrett might have been trying to say was that, like, they had no reason to think that, they had no reason to speak because they didn't think that anything was changing, and and maybe it was in like the board documents, and so people maybe just didn't notice the mill rate, but I'm just trying to clarify that I think that there is a little bit of a, like, oh, like, this is what we thought was happening, and so, like, because we wouldn't have had a chance really to talk about it after listening to the board discussion, I think a lot of people don't think they would need to show up.
So going forward, maybe, is it Matt now? Are you in, so you could take what you have now and at each meeting, as you're tweaking, make that public?
Sure.
So that, you know,
Right, because
we're not hit.
right, because this in a Word document, in a Word doc that the public can access in October, means nothing to me. It doesn't tell me what we're doing, right?
Well, that is the required, as you know, from being on the board, that is the required form. So I don't like it either because it doesn't tell or say much, but that is the required budget publication, and that is what's in the paper, and that's what will be shared in October. So unfortunately, it's not great.
So basically, come October, I have to take this document and compare it to what's in the board packet and figure it out myself.
No, because the way we present it, we do try to highlight some of the changes, but usually I focus on some of these pieces. But Matt and I can absolutely work on a comparison because, no offense against Amy, but Matt is looking at different things. And we've already had discussions on things that he wants to see differently than maybe Amy wanted to. So Matt and I can absolutely work on that.
Well, I think the other thing too is that I feel very similar. I feel like we have a missed opportunity where we have, I mean, I'm looking at our capital fund at 1.9 million for 3 buildings. Being in construction project management, that's not super high to maintain capital improvements. So I think there was a missed opportunity to maybe just take our balanced budget and take whatever would have been extra and put it in strategic planning. But we've got strategic planning going on this year. And I feel like knowing retroactively where some of the emotions are, I think it's just a great learning opportunity for us as the community and paying attention to that October meeting and understanding what that budget looks like. And then the same thing for the board to ask those questions to say, hey, we're changing this. I understand I voted for this, I didn't vote for this, or whatever it is. What is the opportunity? Because I would really like to see it, and it sounded like, I think I heard that your budget this year is based on taxing to the max?
Yes, taxing
So
in full.
if it's not approved to tax to the max, then we're operating in a budget deficit or have to make cuts.
Well, again, it's the board's defined, yeah.
Totally get that.
So if the board tells me in October they do not want to tax to the full authority, I will have to go back and adjust the budget and re-present at another time.
Exactly.
Yes,
Okay, so we're kind of boxed into it this year.
yes.
And do we have like a bucket of things that we know need attention in the way of, this goes to building and sites, right? That $200,000, right?
Right.
I remember last year making the joke like, oh no, we have too much money, it said no school
Right.
ever, right? So to have the excess, do we also have in mind, if we do have a surplus, to not look at it as unbalanced, but rather funds that could go towards needs that we know that we have in two older buildings,
Yes.
right? And things of that nature.
What we do as we're building the budget, so in Fund 10, we do have some of those projects outlined. So some of the things Tina spoke to, like the parking lots, the carpeting, the new gym floor, those were all budgeted and approved by the board to be done in the general fund. So right now, that capital improvement account, I call my rainy day fund, so that we are building and just saving at this point. And that truly is for the future, for bigger projects. Right now, I'm able to balance our budget and get some of those projects done. Like for this upcoming year, I might have to do some roof work, I have some more carpet to do, there's other things that we know, but because of our financial standing, I'm able to budget some of those. I'm more concerned down the road when there's some bigger things that I won't be able to budget for, that's when we would have to ask for the board to dig into that capital improvement.
I'll say we've made an effort to track those things a little bit better and separately, so if we do need to go to referendum at some point in the future, we can say, we fixed these 10 things while operating at a budget that was or was not taxing to the full authority, but now we've got 3 new roofs we need, and it's $4 million, and we've got $1.8 million to do it, and we need a referendum. So I think we've also talked at our last meeting about potentially tracking, excuse me, like where volunteer type work has been done to improve stuff, where there may not even be a cost to the community. Obviously, Jake's done a lot of that with Landscape for the Future, so things like that.
And a lot of the people in this room, thank you.
Yeah, but no, I think we're trying to keep better track of those things, so if we have a need in the future, and I guess going back to something that said before, is being new to the finance committee, I struggled sitting out there in years past kind of understanding how this all worked. It's not, even if you worked in a business, it's a different animal and how things, how you're regulated for your accounts and things of that nature. So I'd welcome any feedback on things that would be better for the community to hear, to present. You know, I'm given a few minutes at every meeting to talk about the finance, and you know, I don't know what's interesting to folks. I like getting into all sorts of stuff, but I'm numbers connects, but there's stuff at a higher level that people would probably be interested in. I'd be happy to report back in an easier format with that level of feedback. If some people don't care, some people do. So, and what I care about may be different than what the vast majority of people care about.
Well, and just tying together what Matt said and what Val said, I think the concern just for the rest of the board and the administration, I think the concern of many people in this room is that last year we had an opportunity to sort of like pennies on the dollar, stock some money away. And I think the Arrowhead referendum weighs heavy on a lot of us, because if that passes, you know, most of us in this room will see our taxes go up potentially, you know, like $1,000 a year, which is a pretty big increase.
And so I am concerned for all of the feeder school districts that if the Arrowhead referendum passes, that there will be absolutely no appetite in the community for future referendums. And so I think that that's really the concern many of us sitting here have, is like, we had an opportunity to like not outrageously overtax people, but to tax what was approved by the community that chose to come to the meeting, and could have socked away a little bit of extra money for, you know, whatever we know is gonna be coming up.
And I'll just add to that, the past 3 referendums that Hartland-Lakeside had failed. So to be like, we can just go to referendum is like, good luck with that. And I would even say, because the fund balance is so healthy, like I would have opted to put all of the excess, all of that 500,000 into Fund 40. Because you guys are just short-term borrowing to meet the gap of, right,
We don't do that at that time, which is why I didn't.
Right.
Because once money goes into the capital improvement fund, I can't touch it. So knowing that after the taxes are received in August, I have no big payments coming in until January, so that is a cash flow concern for me, and I do a cash flow analysis. So if I move all those funds to capital improvement, there might come a time in December that I would have to short-term borrow, which I'm trying not to do.
And I would say, if you look at other districts in our community, they all short-term borrow. So to short-term borrow, it used to be when I was on board, we had to take out bonds, we were so short come January, February, or whatever it was. So, yeah, I would have advocated to put all of it in Fund 40, because you can always find capital improvement projects that need to be done, and also dipping into your fund balance is not good either.
If I may, to follow up on Val's question, because again, even though I was treasurer for a year, there's so much about all this I still don't understand. There's nothing that's preventing us in the future, though, from tapping our fund balance to use it towards a capital project.
Well, you shouldn't do that. That's not recommended.
And why is that?
Well, fund balance you try to use for like a one-time thing.
But like a one-time roof.
Well,
I'm just asking, because that's
For the slippery slope.
Yeah.
Okay.
Slippery slope. I mean, Lake Country used their fund balance to budget their balance and balance their budget, thank you. And like that, they're in a world of hurt. So it also affects your credit rating. So like everything I was taught was like, do not touch the balance.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly. There's no rain coming into the,
Okay. I had one other question. Just looking at General Fund 10, and then specifically expenditures under support services, we are budgeted to spend about $400,000 less in support services this upcoming year than we did this past year. And I was wondering what has changed, or what did we remove from the budget, or what are we not funding in those support services?
Sure, so support services is a crazy catch-all. So that includes administration, it includes buildings and grounds, it includes pupil transportation. So the things that were in there that came out are some of like our parking lots and things of that nature. We did have a lot of improvements that we did. So we did the north lot, the middle school lot, the gym floor, carpet, all of those things. So we had a very large capital improvement expense for last year because we had a healthy amount of money that we could spend last year because of the ESSER funds. So at this time, I'm not proposing as many improvements for this upcoming year.
Okay, because then I think support services, I think, like support services for our students,
Yes.
not capital
And it is some of
improvement
that.
projects. Okay, so we're not cutting out $600,000 from curriculum, student services,
That's
anything
why I
like
don't
that.
like the 2000s, because the 2000s does include pupil services, but it includes building and grounds, which is 253000, which is one you want to know. 256700 is our pupil transportation, which is all still the same. But yes.
Got it, thank you.
So you just said something that got me thinking about our busing issue.
Yes.
How is that potential expected increase reflected or captured in the budget?
Well, for this year, nothing's changing. So there is no change for pupil service, for pupil transportation. All the routes are running exactly as they were.
Well, I guess my thought is, and I'm one of the families that got a letter to go I mean, she would bike to school, or we would drive her in the winter, and now she has the option to ride the bus. So you're gonna get an additional student on the bus, or may need something additional, which may increase your cost, and you're getting reimbursed $15.
That's not 100% correct. So, if your student wanted to get on the bus and they were not on a bus route, you would have to get your student to the closest bus route. So as far as my transportation costs go, I have 12 buses, they're running no matter what, so roughly the cost for me is $26,000 per route. It might be a little higher for this last year. So no matter if there's one kid on that bus or 60 kids on that bus, I pay the same amount.
So you don't think there's gonna be a significant enough surge in the bus routes you have to need more buses?
No, not at
Okay.
this time because we didn't change the routes.
Well, I'm just thinking from a capacity on the school bus, where if the school bus normally had 30 kids, it can only fit 40, and then 20 more gets to that route, all of a sudden that school bus doesn't have enough.
No, so again, more information than you guys wanna know, but from our transportation committee meetings, we had, let's say, just over 600, I don't remember the exact number, it's like 650, that potentially could ride the bus last year. I had about 300 kids actually getting on the bus. So even looking at that, and when we did the pay to ride and let everybody know, our numbers have not changed drastically. So, and we actually added some people, some areas that weren't considered hazardous are now considered hazardous, and we're still okay. So that is something that we'll be working on through this year to look at those costs, but I will probably always have 12 buses running just because our district needs it. So the cost ultimately is the same. I'd rather have more kids on the bus because then per student, it costs me less than it having 3 kids on a bus for $25,000.
Oh, sure, yeah, okay, you just don't think there's gonna be enough more demand for it to add another bus route?
No, because we had to get all of that information to the bus company
Yeah.
already, so I know what that number is, so, no, at this time, I don't see an increase.
So all the routes are still the same, like I have neighbors down the street from me who said they have to pay for it now, even though they didn't pay for it last year.
It's just based on those hazardous plans, so we
Okay, so
had,
the route is the same.
the route is the same,
Pay for it, but if they're paying for it, then shouldn't that change the amount of money that the school district is paying?
It won't change the amount that we're paying to Dousman, is that what you're asking? So, transportation last year, it was $743 for people to pay to ride, and we only had a handful. In looking at our hazardous plans, we didn't have any submitted to the state, so we basically decided to start over and look at all the areas that the community kind of had already. And we had the sheriff department come out, look at those, some were declared hazardous, some were not, but because we didn't wanna upset the entire community, we kept the routes the same. So if you were riding the bus and you are now considered hazardous, you don't have to pay. If you are now, like your neighbor, they have to pay $110 per student, up to $330 per family. So we actually reduced the cost for those who had been paying in the past. But again, we're doing a full year of review and looking at safety as a whole and transportation.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that.
So for the numbers you just said, I had that written down for my comments later.
Okay.
So what you're saying is you evaluated the 110, 330, and we're being at that meeting when the numbers were decided. But you're not charging that this year, that's just the future planning of it? But it's
We're
not being
charging
charged
that
for-
this year.
You are charging it.
So instead of doing the $743, which was the number they had been using in the past, we reduced that significantly because we knew there would be more pay-to-ride families and we didn't want them to have to pay that cost. So we looked at other school districts, what they charge, and then the board, I apologize, but I think they did it in March, sometime in the spring. They came up with the 110 with a max of 330, so that if you have multiple kids, you're not paying above and beyond. And we
Yes.
certainly didn't want to get back to that 743 number.
I remember I was at that meeting when all the numbers were talked about, and it was an equity issue, like this one has 5 kids.
Right.
But from the budget standpoint, does it become a wash? Like, is your 743 and all these 330s equaling the same amount, and that's why we're not seeing it in the budget?
It might be, at the time when, remember when I was building this budget, I didn't know how many kids I was gonna have pay to ride versus, so the budget might change slightly up or down based on those paid ride hours, I'll know that by the end of August, who's actually getting on the bus and who's paying and who qualifies for hazardous or who is just 2 miles or more away and they would have been on the bus anyway.
And so that will be something before the third party count, you would already have updated numbers.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. I appreciate that, and thank you Amy, for walking through all this stuff. I know it's like a lot of questions. But I think you said, but I didn't catch it, about the package and cooperative program fund. Could you say again what the package and cooperative program fund? There's one of the ones that was zeroed out. It's on the printout, but
Oh.
I didn't hear it.
I didn't talk about it because we don't have that, so,
So it's a mandatory listing that we do not.
yes, like I mentioned to Val, this is a budget form that the state requires all school districts to do, so unfortunately I can't change any of the language and things for that, so that is just something that some school districts might have, we just don't have it.
Thank you.
I just have one question request. So a bunch of parents came together and donated 2 bike racks to South last year, and they are still really overflowing with bikes. Is there capacity to add another bike rack at South for this year?
I would ask the principal, but I don't see him present, but we can certainly look into that, because I know we were trying to figure out where a good location was to put those bikes for safety too, just so they're not going across, the drive-through or what have you, so, but we will absolutely, I'll write that down. Because I know we have a lot of kids riding bikes. I'm sorry, I'm doing the all done from like when my kids were little. Are we all done? All right, well, thank you.
All right, moving on to resolution A, salaries of school board members. I had this printout for the chair, but it's just a list of the local salaries of current board members. So I'm sorry, only one, but if you guys would like to take a look at it, anyone, pass it out. As it stands now, all board members receive $2,700 a year, and the president receives $2,800 a year. So that is what you guys will be voting on. Unless, yeah.
Non-officer at a lower pay.
It's like 1,100.
Yeah.
Or something like
Well,
that.
it's whatever they.
No, but
No,
for this
last
past year, you said what it has, what
So
it
the
currently
one,
is.
Oh,
one change that
right.
Tiffany just said is that
Right.
a non-officer had a lower payment schedule.
And that last year was the first time that had been done.
Is anyone interested in the range? So it ranges from $0 at Mequon, Gainesville, Mapleville, Indian Hill, and Wauwatosa, all the way up to $6,500, which is Kenosha Unified.
But that Kenosha Unified would be for a high school board member?
K-12,
Yeah.
K-12, they probably meet twice a month, like how Arrowhead meets twice a month. If you want comparables nearby, Kettle Moraine, which is a K-12, is 4,600, Swallow gets 2,500, Stone Bake 1,500, Merton 850, Lake Country 1,100, North Lake 1,100.
And those are the K-8s, so
Those are
those are more.
Right, smaller in size, but I guess Merton is the next biggest school. I think it was 1,100 maybe.
Trying to see if I can find it.
And what are the amounts now? I'm sorry.
27 and 28.
Okay. 28 or the,
which I believe that it's been that way for,
Yeah.
since you, yeah.
But they can, you can make motions, right?
You can.
I'd like
I
to
need
make a
give it to you
motion to
guys.
set school board member salary at $2,700 with school board president salary at $2,800.
I'll second.
Who seconded?
And
And Charles Worth.
tell me when you're ready.
You motioned to with salaries at 2,700 for regular board members,
All board members.
all board members, and the president 2,800?
Yes.
Thank you. You can go.
Okay. All in favor, raise your hand. You good? Yeah. Okay. All not in favor? Okay. All right.
What was the final count?
22 total, 21 in favor, 1 not.
Okay. Motion passes for school board members to receive $2,700 a year and president to receive $2,800 a year. You know when you're ready.
I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you, good.
Yep. Okay. Resolution B, we're going to set the date for the 2025 annual meeting and budget hearing. September 15th, 2025 is the proposed date. Amy, can you speak to it being in September versus August this go around?
Sure. As you may be aware, teachers came back today, so we were doing teacher orientations, professional development, things of that nature. I'm also hoping to have a little bit more information when I present in September so that it will be closer to what the board actually sees in October. So that was just one of the reasons, or I guess 2 reasons. August is kind of crazy with trying to welcome everybody back, and then September I potentially can have better information to present to the community as a whole.
I'm sure there's a reason why, but I'm gonna ask anyways. Why wouldn't we just have this meeting before the board votes?
In October?
Yeah.
They used to do that. It's very confusing because the preliminary budget that the board approves is the one I have to present at the budget hearing. So the first year I was here, we did it all in October, so I did a presentation, and then I came back in the regular meeting and said, please forget everything I told you, here's what the budget really is. So it's kind of I feel it's confusing, potentially for community as well as the board, because I'm presenting 2 different budgets back to back.
What makes them different?
Well, because whatever the preliminary budget is that the board approves is the one that I have to do for the budget hearing, based on state law. And then the October, the regular board meeting is the one with all the numbers and things that I already know. So since the board has to approve the preliminary budget.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It has to be approved like.
It has to be approved.
Yes,
And it's
it has
got,
to be pre-approved before I present it to you
makes sense.
as the community.
And they can't approve the preliminary budget without the community weighing in?
Well, this is the preliminary budget, so
Yes.
yeah, they did approve it.
We approved the preliminary budget back in May.
Yeah, I agree with you. We used to do it closer because then the information was more accurate with what what the budget would actually be. So,
Is there any rule, I know some of the things, you have to pass it at a board meeting, and then pass it again, and then the board meeting a month later. This is not a situation at all, it's
No, with the budget, it does not have to have a second approval. The board is presented a budget and then they can ask questions, they can ask me to change it, or they can just approve it as is, and then it's presented to the community.
So the proposed date is September 15th.
so this is something we all vote on as well, so if the
Correct.
community, and it wouldn't be changed, it could be changed, right? I mean, so, because if the community said we wanted it to be in October, so it'd be closer, it could be in October, right? But this is something that the community votes on.
Is there any reason we wouldn't wait until after the third Friday count?
It's just a lot of work for you, right?
Yeah.
Basically is what it comes down to. I mean, look, the way I look at it, like, Quick Trip sets a budget for their year. They don't know how much gas they're gonna sell tomorrow, right? I mean, we have a pretty good idea on what the funding is, we're capped out at what we can earn. I mean, the movement from now to October is minimal. I mean, it's
Not last year. Not last year. Apparently there were a lot of facts that changed.
Well, you have to remember last year was a state budget as well, which is a 2-year budget, so we were going in not knowing what the governor was going to do.
Okay.
This year, I'm in year 2 of a state budget, I knew what the governor was giving us. Next year, again, I won't. So
then we'd argue that maybe we should make it, because next year is the biannual budget as well, so it would be wiser to have it closer to October, so we knew more of the.
Well, that's another reason why I'm proposing September.
I mean, if it were October, we would still have to approve a budget in September, which still would not have all the information.
Exactly.
So October might make it seem like we're closer to it, but there's still gonna be an opportunity for this thing to change. The only way it wouldn't change is if we had two meetings in October. So we all met as a board October 1st, and then the next Monday on the 8th, we had it, and then that way it would be locked down. We'd still be throwing a lot on Amy's plate in a very short amount of time for, what's a very small amount on an $18 million budget moving around, in my opinion.
And just out of curiosity, are you full-time or part-time? Because,
I'm full-time.
okay, because in the past, we had a part-time business manager, so just to put it in perspective. Yes, but you also have more responsibilities than business managers in the past.
Yes.
A lot more.
If you guys didn't know, she was actually promoted to the assistant superintendent.
Oh.
So,
Well
deserved. So she does have a lot more responsibility. Madam Chair, I'd like to motion to approve of the annual budget and annual meeting hearing for September 15th, 2025.
I'll second it. Any discussion?
If we did it 1 week later, it'd be after the third Friday, right? But would that cramp Amy too much?
Amy?
We were just following the board schedule, that is usually the third Monday. We can absolutely do it a different time.
Or adjust the board meeting to be 1 week later to coincide.
Because I'm doing the math right? That's the 19th would be the third Friday?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly.
You're just proposing moving it back a week.
To the 22nd.
February 22nd.
Okay, well, we have a motion on the floor, so it needs to be voted on. It was seconded.
I'll move to amend.
Do we just want to vote on that and see if it passes, and then?
Okay, all in favor?
Hold on, we're voting on. Hold on, just give me a second. Garrett, are you making a motion to amend?
I did, yes.
You just said you're making a motion to amend, you didn't say what the amendment was.
Yeah.
Please state it.
To September 22nd at 5:33 PM.
I'll second that.
At 5:33 PM?
Yes.
Who seconded?
I mean,
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to amend the primary motion.
Okay, all in favor? All not in favor?
1, 2,
How many for?
20.
So the motion on the floor currently is to approve of the annual meeting on September 22nd, 2025 at 5:33 PM.
you need a second for that?
Wait, I thought we just voted.
No,
we
you have
voted,
to.
we just voted to amend the original motion to that. So now the open motion on the floor, I'll state it again, is to approve the annual meeting to be on September 22nd, 2025, beginning at 5:33 PM.
I'll second.
There is no second. This is discussion, and then anyone, if there's no discussion, that the chairperson calls for a vote.
Discussion? Okay, all in favor? All not in favor?
I'm abstaining.
All right. Let me know when you're ready. Okay. So motion passes to have the annual meeting for 2025, September 22nd at 5:33.
Greta, did you get the numbers for that one? For the yes, the no, and the
20
abstain?
yes, 0 no.
Pardon?
20 yes, 0
No,
no.
1 no. One
Oh,
no.
you voted no?
Yeah, I did.
And one abstain.
1 no, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yep, I'm good.
all right. Resolution C, our last thing to do is adopt 24-25 school year tax levy, which is, as I remind you, already built into the budget based on the full authority.
Madam Chair, I'll motion to approve the 2024-2025 school year tax levy as presented.
Second.
Discussion?
This isn't really an adoption of a tax levy though, right? Because you can change it. So,
Correct.
okay, so it's not really an adoption of a tax levy.
I think we said approve.
I did
The
say.
motion was approved, not
But
adopted.
the agenda says adoption.
Okay, you got the second?
Yep, Matt, right? Yep.
Okay, all in favor?
Thirteen. Sorry.
That's okay.
All not in favor? All not in favor?
Zero.
Do you want to call for abstain?
Yeah, one abstain.
One abstain.
Well, don't they all get to abstain too, because they're voting
Oh,
members?
oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, for those of you who are abstaining, raise your hand, please.
Can you keep your hands up one more time, please?
11.
I have 11.
Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn the annual meeting
What time?
at 7:47.
How about 6:47?
I'll second it. When you're ready.
I'm good.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right.
Need that count on that? All right, the annual meeting and budget hearing is adjourned. All right, we're running behind here.
We're gonna take a quick break before going in.
Yeah, we're gonna take a 5-minute break between the meetings.
Thanks.
Yeah.
So Tiffany, what I was gonna say is not that there was gonna be any give and take. People were confused that there's a room on here for public comments. Well, it's all gonna be public discussion anyway. So that's what people.
Okay.
You're good.
That's why there was, anyway.
Okay,
That's
got it.
the point I was trying to make.
Yeah, I do.
Sorry, I totally forgot about the upstairs people.
Tiffany, with these add late people.
Thanks, man.
Have a good night.
Put these on because they're so if it's hot, kind of soft pants.
You don't like it?
No.
Her face when she walked in, I was like, right.
I feel like I'm gonna hit my head. Even though there's no chance of me hitting my head, I still feel like I'm going to. I do have one time.
I can still. Oh, yeah.
So they got, sorry, I'm just gonna take it off right there. I don't, it's my knowledge, I just say, if I'm too afraid, I'm gonna get up there like this. So
Anna.
That's not right.
Did you start the timer? I didn't.
I did. I'm just letting people.
They're adults.
Yeah. But we should get cracking. Oh, Amy's going.
I'm sorry.
I don't think we need these for the. I don't know.
I'm missing the kids. I told a story of last game, two kids. Of course, the instinct was to go pick her up. I want to pick her up like this, but it's not my kid, I can't. So that's how I got there, but I don't miss every.
Yeah, good.
But it was fun. This age is it's just what matters.
Do you have a spare jacket back in your office or anything?
Exactly. All right. It was
And
short.
I don't have any blankets in my bed, or I'd go get them for you.
I'm okay as long as I
Get
get
everybody
it.
in bed. Do you need towels? Okay.
All right.
Yeah, now understand.
But now it's, I don't know, we can't really do much.
It's all right. So leave a comment.
Okay.
Good luck.
All right, are we ready? All right. Amy, ready?
Oh, yeah? Do it.
All right, we're calling to order at 6:55. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Giving public notice.
Public notice was given.
Okay, we've got everyone in person, so we don't need to vote on virtual participation. So we are moving to public comments. Val.
Hello, thank you. This is one of those cases where in the past, the board sometimes allowed for public comments after discussion before a decision was made, and I kind of wish this was one of those times. I just wanted to comment on the Title IX aspect of the agenda. I noticed that there's two different policies, one that takes place before August 1st, one that takes place after August 1st. They look like they're Neola policies, and my understanding is that if you use their policies as outlined, they kind of back you in a lawsuit, if there's a lawsuit, unless they're tinkered with. Is that, can you get to, yeah, all right. So I guess my request would be that it looks like that agenda item says discussion with possible decision. So given the fact that the Supreme Court ruling and then also the Seventh Circuit's court's decision in Wisconsin in regards to the matters of Title IX, I'm kind of curious to see which direction the board goes. So I'm kind of asking that you defer the actual decision for next month, because I would have opinions depending on what your discussion, where you guys are leaning. So that's my only public comment.
Thank you. Darcy? Oh, sorry. Moved over there.
Want me to spell it?
No. Now I got it.
So I have similar comments because I was looking through the policies today and I was trying to figure out the differences, and after looking through them, and then I think Ben probably sent me the article about Kenosha earlier, and so I'm I would appreciate hearing the discussion and then us being able to then also comment on it once we hear your opinions about it as well, especially since things are fluid. So I would appreciate that as well. That's it.
Niels?
I guess more broad, we've talked about it in the past in some of these public comments, but just about being able to hear board discussion, not necessarily with Title IX, but with any bigger policy change decisions or just things like that in general. Hearing the board discussion gives a chance for the community to kind of weigh in, knowing where the direction is going versus trying to guess what your discussion is about other than approving the policy. So I've said it in the past, it'd be great in the forward, just moving that down on the agenda so we have a chance to contribute to the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you. Ben?
First of all, I don't understand why no one's using their 3 minutes. Oh my gosh. The only person who's ever been cut off in this room, I think. But I'm not gonna do that today. So 2 things. One, as my wife Darcy mentioned, I did forward her some information. I'm a history and civics teacher, but not in this district. So I know a little bit about this, but also I feel like I can speak a little bit like as a teacher who works with students every day, and the issues that students might be going through. I feel like the board has a chance to extend some grace, and I feel like there would be a chance to be a little cute and say like, okay, if this gets overturned and that gets overturned, we can do this thing. Instead, I think it would be most prudent to just assume that the current state of law under the Seventh Circuit decision that Val mentioned will stay in place. And that way for the next year, we don't have uncertainty and we don't have to do extra revisions, that we just use pretending the current state of things is the way they would stay. Nothing about the decision that could happen at the federal level would prevent adoption of a rule compliant with the more protective to students rule. And I think that it would just prevent doing more revisions and more back and forth. So that's what I would suggest on an efficiency standpoint, besides us, in my opinion, in the interest of the students' standpoint. Separately, my second issue is I mentioned the buses. I had on my notes before anyone else talked about the buses, but there was a lot of discussion earlier in the year about being fair and finding a good equitable rule for the buses with 110 charge per student and 330 max per family, so that families with more children didn't have an undue burden. And one thing that I thought really echoed for that is the good heart of the board and how the board was so considerate in weighing all the different parts. I don't know how to do this without saying a name. I was really impressed with how Tiffany was very thoughtful and picked a number that seemed both listening to everyone and still fair towards the budget and the interest of the taxpayers. Similarly, I wanted to either ring a bell or bang a gavel, whatever the right word is, for the idea, which I brought up 3 consecutive school years now, of having free school lunches for all students. I know we just had a budget meeting and we don't have a huge surplus, but it seems like with the numbers we were looking at, the free school lunches for all students is literally equitable. Everyone is the same and ensures whatever student situation is at home, that they're getting one full meal. And the real advantage to giving everyone a free school lunch is there's no stigma. It's not like, oh, the kids with like the red tickets get it free and the other kids are paying. And all of it would be transparent because everyone gets a free school lunch. We were talking about the $250,000 being put into the general fund and being put towards a rainy day. The entire the entire food service budget was $260,000. So I don't know what the difference is between students who are currently eligible for free school lunch versus the student population that isn't eligible, but it's gotta be a number that we could try to find. I'm not talking breakfast and lunch, just lunch to guarantee the kids are getting one full meal a day. So that's something for 3 years I've mentioned, and I feel like I would love for our district to be able to find a way to do that. I think middle school kids should have that. That was it, thank you.
Thank you. That concludes public comments. Okay. Committee reports, PPC.
Okay. We met on Wednesday, August 12th, and we really reviewed 2 different topics. One was the Neola policies that are in the packet for this evening. And most of those, again, are templates. So there are not ABC choices. The only choices in there were fill in the blank as far as who would be the person in charge of something. When Amy and I met and we talked with the administration over it, most of our questions were also related to process implementation and not necessarily the policy itself. So we didn't seem to have any issues with anything that we read. Everything seemed very normal and in line with our district and the people in it. So our suggestion was to approve it. There was only one section where we jointly agreed to make a word change from or to and. And in that it was to include the superintendent on a particular report versus the building principal, or we changed it to and. So I believe that was the only actual change other than fill in the blank. So our recommendation is to go through those and accept those. And then the second thing we talked about was Title IX that was brought up. And it went in a little bit different direction than this evening because there was a little bit different situation before Friday. But we had met and we talked through it and we really believed that it should come to the board and that the whole board needs to discuss it and that it's not something that the policy committee necessarily would want to say yes or no to. We wanted to just bring it to the board and let the board do it. Amy had suggested, rightly, that we review the policies as a just in case and have selections of if it was implemented, these would be the choices that the policy committee would recommend. Unfortunately, my week didn't allow for it and I was planning on doing it on the weekend. And then given some of the other changes that happened prior to the weekend, I didn't get to it. Tina also reported on her WASDA conference and the information she learned. And the last thing is that the administration will be, or is already created a 48-hour plan. Will be, right?
We have the 48-hour plan, sans the.
Yep, so they are working on and already have completed a 48-hour implementation plan for the new Title IX policies if the district decides to adhere to them. So, or if the courts decide that it's law and it has to be enforced. So it's like a triage. They're ready to go within 48 hours to implement the new policies in adherence to it.
I guess I don't, can I ask questions?
Yes, go ahead.
Yeah.
I don't understand that piece. So we've got the Neola template. What is this 48-hour? I don't know.
The 48-hour, and then they can probably explain a little better to me, but it's more about implementing and rolling out the communication to the staff. And feel free to take it from there.
Yeah, when going to the WASDA conference, which is the Wisconsin Association of School District, administrators, the advice from the legal teams, and there were 7 different units there, and their recommendation was to, if your board is a board that has stayed or tabled the Title IX policy, to ensure that we knew effective August 1st what our 48-hour turnaround plan might be. So what that looks like is we've already designated Amy as the coordinator of Title IX. We already know what the staff would need to do in order to get certified or watch the video. We have a means in which to get that to our staff through a portal that we already provide to our staff. It's a Google site that they currently watch all their mandatory videos on and they sign off on. So that's really the piece for us. The policy piece is for the board. So that's what we mean by that.
So it's not a policy, it's an education? The 48-hour plan is an education of the staff?
It's because we have
policy?
to, yes, because we have to. It's part of the process, is training our staff. So we have to get our staff. If you decide tonight, then tomorrow we would have to launch to our staff that they have 48 hours to complete the training.
If we voted, which I don't know what we're gonna do on the title, if we voted to pass the Neola policies as written by Neola, you guys would then have to go through some sort of training protocol fairly quickly.
That is correct.
You have put in place a training protocol if we don't pass this.
If we don't pass this, we already have the policy from 2020 that is our Title IX.
What would cause you to enact that?
The 2020 policy is already in place, so Title IX was updated in 2020, and that's already in place in the district. It's the new stipulations that came down that were handed out, where you have all this disagreement on the legality of it.
they have a plan that if the board tonight says, we believe in it, let's execute it, we all approve. Within 48 hours, their staff will be trained and ready to go according to the new policy as adopted tonight by the board, if that's what we choose.
If we punt it to September or later date, is there anything that would cause you to have to implement that plan? Because they said you should have it ready, but if something were a complaint or something were to happen, that would not trigger this training?
No.
We'd have to deal with whatever's happening.
Right, and we know that even if it were to happen, that, it happened in a local area district, that the 2020 policy would stand, because it would stand in court in any kind of situation that we have currently.
Okay, I get it.
And that's it.
Okay. Matt?
Finance was, pretty high level from just kind of a monthly standpoint. We spent a lot of time going through the kind of annual presentation that Amy presented. We had the meeting just a week ago. Amy, I thought you did a great job tonight. I think sitting here last year to this year, I'm more educated on the process, so maybe it made more sense to me this time, but I do think you had some stuff laid out there nicely, took some of the feedback we've given and provided it. We talked about it's a bit of a delicate balance with that sort of thing. She's kind of statutory, has to provide certain things in certain formats, and it's not always intuitive to people how that is. And so there's kind of a balance of over and under sharing. So, with that, I'll reiterate what I said earlier. If the community is looking for more from my little section here, because I kind of say what happened in our last meeting, then Amy kind of comes out and she presents the budget, so it's a little, I never really know what to say here. If the community is looking for more, please let Amy and I know, because we are working together to try to just, I won't say improve some of the reporting, or at least make it more digestible for non-finance folks or for non-people who are kind of versed in it. So, I'd welcome that level of feedback. So, I don't have anything sexy to report on the finance committee at this time, other than, thanks Amy for that presentation. I thought it's changed some since we saw it, it changed for the better. And so I think we're in good shape, so I appreciate it.
Okay. Okay, consent agenda. We've got the approval of employee personnel report, monthly voucher and purchasing card report, school board meeting minutes from July 15th, and the board policies that Chris outlined just a bit ago.
I just had additional questions related to personnel reports, so I'd like to pull that from the consent agenda, please.
Okay. All right, well, I'm gonna make a motion to approve the consent agenda items A, C, D, and E with employee personnel report pulled out.
Second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, consent agenda approved.
Can you just,
Sure.
please, thank you.
Now we can discuss it now, or is that?
Chris?
No, we can discuss it now.
Second.
Okay, just a second.
I don't know when else we would discuss it if we don't discuss it now.
Yeah. Well, we can put
Okay.
it on the next agenda.
No. Tina, we had discussed this a little bit at PPC, and just wanted to follow up on it, because specifically we had talked about at PPC that a couple of months ago, we had a position open and we're planning to hire a new special education teacher. But then we wanted to wait until our new director of pupil services joined to determine whether or not we actually needed another special education teacher or not. And at the PPC meeting, we discussed that it was felt that another special ed teacher wasn't necessary, but we were gonna hire an aide instead. And that all of our special education students' IEP minutes are gonna be met that way. And as you know, this is a topic that's near and dear to me, so I've been perseverating on this over the past week. And one of the things that crossed my mind is that the skill set and educational level and what an aide can bring to a student versus a teacher are vastly different. And we have fantastic aides, right? But hiring an aide doesn't provide the same services to our students as hiring a teacher. And so knowing that we had lost a teacher that we weren't going to replace, I was hoping that our Director of Pupil Services and Admin and maybe even the board can circle back around in a couple of months and make sure that we're still meeting all those IEP minutes. And that we're happy with the fact that we replaced a teacher with an aide, because that's just something I worry about. And then also thinking about things is just wondering whether or not we have enough flexibility in all 3 of our schools. If we were to have an additional student or 2 come in with special ed requirements, or by not hiring another teacher, are we kind of maxed out on all levels? Because that happens not infrequently, as I'm sure you know, where we will have an additional student come in mid-year who has needs, and we need to have the flexibility to meet that. So I don't know what your thoughts are on going back to that at a subsequent board
Sure, yeah, I
meeting, or
think
what your
I've
thoughts are on
said,
that?
you know, we're always reevaluating everything.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
constantly in a fluid situation with that. I mean, we know that students do come and go. We do know that we are evaluating and looking at processes on a regular basis, looking at IEPs, looking at FBAs, looking at, I mean, we did a great day of training all morning this morning. So yeah, absolutely, those things are on our radar. I think with the budget that was presented tonight, you understand that that is at a deficit in enrollment. And so it's a balanced budget right now, right? If we start to see some things change and we need extra staff or we need more assistance that way, hopefully our budget will be able to support that. You know, so right now, absolutely, we're taking a look at different pieces. We did reduce by 1 section in 4K, and that employee is going into special ed. She's going to be doing special ed now, which is a position that was not previously what she was doing. So yeah, we're always evaluating, we're always looking at things, and obviously our number 1 priority is what's in the best interest of our students.
So I just want to clarify, so we have a prior 4K gen ed teacher who is now going to step into a special ed teaching role? I'm not sure I'm understanding.
She is, nope, you're right, you're not. So we have a special ed 4K person, she does early childhood.
Okay.
And then the second half of the day, she would teach regular 4K.
Okay.
This year, she is going to do general, what is it, 4K.
This year she's doing
All,
AC
yeah.
and special ed.
All special ed.
All special
She has a
Okay.
special ed certified teacher who also teaches 4K.
But the gap we were trying to fill was at that south to North Shore level. So she'll help us out at North, Hartland North, but the gap that I'm worried about is at the higher level.
Yep,
Okay.
I'm fully aware, thank you.
Okay, and I just wanted to make sure I was understanding.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Based on that discussion, then I make a motion to approve the employee personnel report as presented.
Okay, I'll second it. Discussion? You good, Chris?
Yeah, I'll catch up.
You want me to wait and vote?
You second?
Yeah, I'm like, who seconded it?
I made the motion.
Yeah.
Yep, I'm caught up.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, personnel report approved.
Thanks for keeping up with me,
Oh,
appreciate it.
Okay, Tina.
Yes, good evening. I apologize. I am running a fever and not feeling super hot. So if I'm over here shivering and you seem a little bit off, that's what's going on tonight. But I am excited to share with you a little bit of vision for the future of Hartland. And I think you probably heard me talk and discuss in the past about this idea of a portrait of a graduate and who are we. Last year I brought to the board, yes, absolutely, so you can see me. And the annual meeting, the idea of keeping an eye on the future. As we took a year to kind of get to know and understand who we are as a district and working with admin throughout the course of the year, as we continue to work to try to figure out how to build and develop a strategic plan. I think it's really hard for us to, as a district, as an admin team, as teachers, to really know what our next steps are. So in the absence of that right now, I kind of am chomping at the bit to share my vision for the future of our students at Hartland-Lakeside School District. Coined, This Is Our Story. Portrait of a graduate, understanding that every story is unique. This is our why. It's to inspire the next generation of leaders. Hartland-Lakeside offers an opportunity for students to reflect on learning throughout the year, analyze evidence of their growth, build self-awareness of themselves as learners, strengthen relationships with their teachers and peers, discuss their personal strengths and interests. They make connections beyond the classroom, to develop public speaking, presentation, and interview skills, and to celebrate their successes. That's what our Hartland-Lakeside staff and administration strive to do. Habits of well-rounded success is setting up for lifelong learning. Our goal is to develop and grow confident communicators, creative problem solvers, critical thinkers, collaborators, versatile risk takers, goal-directed, brave, and resilient individuals. What does that mean? We listen, we learn, we speak, we write. It's about sharing thoughts, ideas, and perspectives so that others can understand us and we can understand them. Being a communicator means we read to learn, we listen to understand, we speak to inform and motivate others, we write for distinct purposes and audiences, and we use technology to explore research and exchange ideas. As creative and critical thinkers, we are creating unique solutions to challenges that arise and contribute to society by asking, how can I make a difference? Creative and critical thinkers create through design-build processes. They problem solve and create unique solutions. They apply learning in new and different ways. They express thoughts and ideas meaningfully. They evaluate ideas and information sources for validity, relevance, and impact, and they use evidence to support their thinking.
Tina, I don't know if you saw it, but it said the projector is going to turn off in 5 minutes. Are you going to be longer than 5 minutes, or is there a button?
No, I'll go, it'll be good, thank you, but I can make sure. I'll go quick, right? A collaborator works together, they listen and understand, and they achieve a common goal, working respectfully with others by honoring different viewpoints, ideas, and perspectives to achieve common goals. As collaborators, we respect other people's thinking, we work together within a group to learn, be productive, and achieve common goals. We consider perspectives to include a variety of viewpoints, and we give and receive helpful feedback to improve our work. As a goal-directed, brave, and resilient individual, we engage, problem solve, manage time, and advocate for self, making healthy choices when choosing friends, managing time, and setting goals, gaining skills to successfully address challenges throughout their lifetime. Hartland-Lakeside graduate skills, how? From pre-K to 8th grade, our goal is to build lifelong skill sets and strategies to cultivate the strongest graduates in our community. Not that I don't think being ranked really high is not impressive, it is, but it only measures literacy and math and attendance. Who are we? What is our story? That's what we're here to find out. So one of the ways that we're going to do that is look at some at-home supports, some questions, some guided questions. Now, we're not telling parents how to parent, that's not our job. But if you can help us guide the communication, what did you do that was creative today? How did you help a person today? What ideas did you share today? Because we oftentimes go home at night, at least in my house, my kids were sitting around the table. How was your day? What do you get? Fine. What happened? Nothing. Anything to share? No? Anybody get in trouble? Oh yeah, right? Then you get the lowdown, right? Well, that's all kind of just not real positive stuff, right? So we want to really focus our kids on the positive and trying to help them make good choices and learn that way. So we're also looking at partnering and connecting with our community, and I talked a little bit about this during the annual meeting. One of the things that I know this community has asked for and have provided me, I believe, with some grace in understanding that we needed to get some processes put in place and some things taken care of at the district office. At the district level, I think it's a great institution built on sand. And so I think we needed to put some things that were a little bit more concrete into play. And we've been able to do that. We've put the people in the right chairs, and now it's time for us to build our community. That means through Tina Talks, through community and family surveys,
We do have a Hartland-Lakeside app, which is intuitive to the actual website that we have, but it's easier to work through. And then we're looking at community business engagements. What that might look like are things such as a BA5, which is a business after 5, where different host sites throughout our community get together with different stakeholders, owners of businesses, things of that nature, and we just learn to get to know one another. When I look at who we are and what we are engineering the stories of our children. We start them in 4K and we build them and grow. Why story? Because we did a phenomenal job last year of approving an incredible project that has taken place at North Elementary. It's unlike anything I have seen in going into my 30th year of education. Heather had a vision, she had a thought, and we saw it through. And I'm proud of this community for doing that because it really truly is transforming literacy. It is taking play at 48 months out of the womb, we get our babies. We get them landed in our library. And in previous years, not that it was right or wrong, it was a matter of, let's get reading right away. And we lose that whole imagination and that creative process, which we just love, or at least I do, as an educator and also as a person of fine arts. It means the world to me. So when we talked this through and we brought it forward, you're gonna be just thrilled when you see that beautiful, beautiful location opened up. It's really something special. Again, the 27th at 11 o'clock at North, that's the ribbon cutting. But what that does for us is starting us off then at that young age of creativity and teaching and taking that time to learn how to storytell, and then it develops into our reading and our writing. And I really believe in all that I am that's really gonna just catapult that whole process. We are taking a deeper look into bringing in, we brought somebody in this year to take on the role of centers and do some teaching and learning who has a theater background. She is bilingual. There's just, it's great movement as you see us move forward in that realm to take us to that next level. And that is where the foundation is. So you get that established and it only grows from there. The other pieces that you'll see are those transition years, 2nd grade to 3rd grade. It's hard. And it's hard in every single school district across the state. That's probably one of the hardest years. Yes, 5th to 6th grade is tough, but that 2nd to 3rd grade is such a giant leap in academics. And so we're really, really emphasizing how are we going to make that a easier slide for us here at Heartland, and what are we going to do? And we're focusing on other things besides literacy and math. It's important, don't get me wrong, but we need to make sure that we're keeping up with technology. Michelle brought forward some new STEM classes and programming that we're looking at. I'd love to take advantage of our outdoor education opportunities that we have. I had an incredible day walking down to that pond back behind South and that connects South and North Shore. Incredible spaces down there, incredible opportunities that this district has and beautiful things that they're doing. So I'm hopeful that as we continue to go forward into our strategic planning, that we remember that every child has a story, and that Hartland-Lakeside's story is to engineer the most brave and resilient, strongest students in our community. Thank you. Additionally, within my report, I'm gonna hand this to the board. If the board, I'm just giving this to the board so they have a reference. It was a doodle, and basically what this is a calendar of all of the dates between now and May, with all of the school board meetings, our strategic, based on your doodle responses, it's your workshop dates and times, and then the Tina Talks and the dates and times. So I am sharing this with you to the board today, and it will be public very soon. I just wanted them to be able to see it so that we all know what that looks like. Yeah, I think that's what we have as far as the superintendent report is tonight. Does anybody have any questions on that?
No? Thank you.
Excellent, great, thank you. Next on the agenda under my title is the Title IX conversation.
Is that on the floor now?
It's on the floor.
Madam Chair, I'd like to read a statement I proposed and follow it with a motion.
Okay.
As members of the school board, it is our responsibility to ensure that policies we implement are legally sound and in the best interest of our students and community. Given the current legal landscape, there are significant uncertainties surrounding the proposed Title IX changes by the Biden administration. The recent ruling by the Supreme Court last Friday has cast doubt on the legality of the changes. Currently, there are 7 federal lawsuits filed, including 26 different states. Forgive me if I'm off by one or if something got closed by tonight. But these lawsuits underscore the potential litigation risk we face if we were to implement a policy that might later be deemed illegal by the courts. Considering our district is specifically noted as a Moms for Liberty protected district, it's obvious there is a growing resistance and increased legal challenge to the proposal. So given these factors and the various legal opinions suggesting that a pause is prudent until the courts fully resolve these issues, I believe it's in the best interest of our district to avoid a premature action that could expose us to unnecessary legal challenges and financial liabilities. My motion forthcoming will be based on, number 1, the recent Supreme Court ruling. Number 2, the inclusion as a protected district in the Moms for Liberty case injunction. Number 3, the ongoing federal lawsuits. Number 4, the overall legal uncertainty. Number 5, the various legal opinions advising caution. And 6, the significant litigation risks associated with implementing a potentially illegal policy. Therefore, I move to table the proposed Title IX policy changes until the courts have fully resolved the matter.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
I believe the same with second.
Okay, it's been seconded.
So
Discussion?
you want to propose it indefinitely? Not have another, I guess, I mean, this stuff could be in the courts for years. Like, this stuff isn't just like this isn't run down to small claims court and do this. I mean, as I understand it, we're driven by the 7th court ruling that puts some responsibility on us to follow some of this. I guess if I read the Neola policy as written, well, 2 things. I think Val made this in the comment. Is there really a risk for us being sued on a policy that's written by Neola? I mean, that was, as I understood it, that was one of the benefits of moving to Neola, is they will indemnify us if we put in place a policy that somebody challenges. So is there a real risk that if somebody files suit against us relating to this policy, wouldn't we be indemnified? A nod yes from Tina.
Yeah, I mean, that is the thing, right? I mean, but I think this is your decision. I'm trying really hard as the board to do the board.
I guess what are we concerned about with passing this policy? What's the concern? What's the harm to our district? Like what is the concern if we don't go through and pass this? I mean, aren't we at just as much risk if we don't have a policy?
We have a policy.
We have a policy though. We have the 2020 Title IX policy, which covers us.
Well, it doesn't define sex discrimination, right? I mean, that's the whole reason for the change. It doesn't define, I'm no attorney, it doesn't define sex discrimination as a protected class. Is that?
It does, it's how sex is defined. So it currently does define sex discrimination, but it does it by biology, not by gender identity. The new policy changes the definition of it, which is one of the more difficultly interpreted parts. That's one of the issues. And then the second part, at least for me personally, was the redefinition then of harassment, which could also encumber or stumble upon somebody else's First Amendment rights for freedom of speech. So if a child is brought up in a Christian household that believes in only biological sex, if they inadvertently refer to someone else according to this, it could be considered harassment. It could be, because of the gender identity definition.
I get that, but I mean, that can happen regardless if we have a policy to address it. The policy, I mean, as I read through the policy's pretty benign. It doesn't say we have to do anything. It basically puts in place a process that if somebody raises their hand and says something happens, we now have a process to deal with it. And in fact, I mean, on page 19 of this, in the supportive measures, it says, and I'm cutting out some parts of it just to simplify it, but it says, for allegations of sex discrimination, the district's provision of support measures does not require the district to alter the alleged discriminatory conduct for the purpose of providing a supportive measure. The Title IX coordinator shall determine appropriate supportive measures on a case-by-case basis. So it doesn't say we have to do, like if somebody raises their hand and says there's a gender identity issue or things of that nature, this policy doesn't tell us what we have to do. It puts in place a process to run it through a system to deal with it on a case-by-case basis. It doesn't say that every boy that raises his hand and says, I identify as a girl, that we have to let them play girls' sports, we have to let them use a girls' bathroom, or whatever the concern is. It just puts a process, at least as I read it, it just puts a process in place to deal with it. And it says it's to be addressed on a case-by-case basis. So I don't know, this whole policy seems a bit benign. It seems strange for me we're rushing through like putting in all of these Neola policies without doing a full review because we're concerned about certain things. And then this one, which is kind of like the hot button topic, in which our attorney says that regardless of what just happened at the Supreme Court, as I understand, the Supreme Court basically has just thrown it back to the state courts. The state court has ruled that gender identity is a protected class, and people can feel how they do on that. This doesn't say what we have to do if somebody raises their hand on it. It basically puts in place a process for it. And I imagine if it's a very difficult case, our Title IX coordinator is going to talk to attorneys and figure out which way the wind's blowing at that point in time. So I don't know why we tabled something. I mean, we rushed through a policy last month to deal with people who didn't want to go to the lunar eclipse, right? We got a policy in place because of that. Now we've got this, which is on every news station, is a big thing. We've got a policy written, very benign, that puts a process in place that also indemnifies for us if somebody raises their hand and says, that policy is terrible, I'm going to sue you guys. We can turn it over to Neola. And the policy doesn't tell us what we have to do. We just run it through our Title IX coordinator. So we're not making a call that says, and this stuff in my mind, none of it's black and white. I mean, there are cases that, I don't know the science behind all this stuff, and it's all dealt with on a case-by-case basis. So I don't feel like passing this, we're taking a stand one way or another on some of these issues. We're basically just putting a process in place to address those issues. Because I guess absent this, we don't have something about a gender identity, because that's not in our current policy. So I would be fine to table this to next month. It seems some of the community wanted to have some input, and I think it's helpful to hear their input because this impacts everybody. So those are my opinions right now, or my thoughts.
I disagree. I've spoken directly with legal, and the wait and see approach is what's recommended for us until the injunctions are lifted.
I didn't see that recommendation from our council. We pay council for our school. I didn't see it. That was not in the email that we got forwarded. That was not a recommendation from our council.
Well, I can forward it on.
I'm waiting for you to be.
That was a recommendation made after Friday happens with the Supreme Court decision.
What's the concern with putting this? What are we afraid is gonna happen if we put this in place? What's the concern?
Right now, you've got something that's undetermined everywhere. It's in these different areas, and what we're trying to figure out is where it sits. We are currently covered by a policy, which is why rushing to throw this one in while it's still being tossed around in courts, I think is, but kicking it down the road makes the most sense than trying to push it through. I agree, there's some things that streamline processes in there. I think we've talked that those actually would help us down the road, right? We've streamlined less people, less money that we're spending in those areas if it happens. But the uncertainty with those things, and just the recent things, just waiting till the waters cool down before putting the policy through. We're talking about it again, pushing it through.
Not deciding on a policy is making a decision not to put this in place. And so if we are protected by Neola.
Once again, we have one in place. This is adding a provision to what's on there with this new policy.
What other policies, as we are going through these, have we decided to not put in place a Neola policy and hold it back? Out of all the series, which other policies have we decided to do that on?
We'd have to go back and look, I don't know, I think there was one or two that didn't apply to us.
There was one in this most recent review at PPC that dealt with early graduation. So we said it doesn't pertain because we don't graduate students because we only go up to 8th grade. That's the only one I can think of in all the policies that we've reviewed so far where we said it did not apply, and so we pulled it.
Right, so I mean, if a lawsuit comes out, somebody says, okay, you, Hartland-Lakeside, passed every single applicable Neola policy except this one. This specifically puts a process in place to deal with this issue. You decided not to implement it. That story carries more risk for our district than putting in place a policy that we are indemnified for, and a policy which is really just process. It says we will deal with it on a case-by-case basis and figure out if it has merit. Are there things we should do to address the situation? So it doesn't make sense for me that we are, like I said, we are rushing through putting all these policies in place because we are concerned that we are exposed on something. And then we have this one policy which basically says, so-and-so's in charge of these things and they follow a process when these things come up. That's really all the policy says. It doesn't say we have to do anything other than address the issue, address the complaint and look into it. Similar to somebody raising their hand and saying, I don't want to look at the lunar eclipse. We just put a policy in place that we're going to do all this stuff to appease them. But somebody raised their hand and says, I have a gender identity issue and I don't like what you're teaching in this class, or I don't, whatever it is. We don't have a policy for that. That doesn't make sense to me. We consciously decided we're gonna table this until the Supreme Court rules on it or whoever, which could be 5 years from now. I mean, these court cases take forever. I'm teed up as a testifying expert on a COVID-19 business interruption case. I have no idea when we're gonna be testifying. By the time it happens, I'm not gonna remember exactly the facts specific to my client for their financial impact back to COVID. I'm going to go relearn it all, right? Something this big is going to go through the courts and it's going to get kicked back, and to just table this indefinitely just seems a little negligent, given we have a policy that's going to indemnify us that basically just puts a process in place to address.
What was the wording you used? It wasn't indefinitely.
It was not indefinitely. The motion on the table is to.
Is that in here indefinitely, or it was to?
I motion to table the proposed Title IX policy changes until the courts have fully resolved the matter.
What does that
Could still be
mean?
5 years.
I mean, I guess, what does that mean, right? I mean, Wisconsin could run it up the flagpole here and the state Supreme Court could rule something. But, so is that resolved? Because we could still appeal it to the Supreme Court. I mean, that just, there's some indefinite level of.
And there's nothing to say that a person couldn't propose to the chairman to bring it back to a vote later. Good, but as of now, it would be, the decision for now would be to make it until it's fully resolved. And again, to answer some of your things, at least from my perspective, nothing changed from what I read off. The policy example you gave of some of the others, none of them are in federal court right now being challenged. So while there may be indemnification to the cost, there is still risk of other costs to the districts. We're taking our eye off the future, and we're dealing with something that's not for kids. We're dealing with potential litigation. This one has the potential to be illegal, whereas the lunar eclipse one, I don't think so. You also open the door and run the risk, case by case or not, of having a boy who identifies as a girl being in a girls' locker room. And I have both boy and girl, and I prefer for her not to see male genitalia regardless of what the male genitalia thinks until she's 35. Probably not at middle school.
There's nothing in here that says we gotta start letting boys run around the girls' locker room. I mean, basically says we have a process if somebody wants to.
It's a process of how to deal with it, you're correct.
Yeah, but there's no remedy in here. I mean, there's no like laying out that if X, there's no if-then chart, if this happens, you guys have to do this. This is just putting a process in place. I just don't know why we're scared to put a process in place to address it. I guess, what's our process now if somebody raises their hand and comes up with some of these?
We've got the Title IX that we fall back on.
What's that?
The current Title IX from 2020, which would cover most of that. There's still a process to deal with it. It's not as clean as some of those other portions. There's a few more things you have to get involved in, but there's still a process to handle those.
It's just too complicated. It's so gray. I don't feel comfortable even putting processes in place because it's so gray. I don't know if we have that approved, where that would take us. That may take us to somewhere I don't approve of.
Look, I don't approve of boys that run around girls' locker rooms either, just to be clear. I don't think this policy grants boys the rights to do all that sort of stuff.
I think it's the stepping stone to doing just that.
May I? Okay. So going over the concerns about this being legal or not legal, in the email that we received from Neola at the beginning of this, that was part of their June 2024 overview and comments about this. Granted, that was before some of the legal cases came out, but they specifically said on their special updates on Title IX that the new regulations carry the full force and effect of law. So whether or not there's other court cases going on challenging it, it is still law as of now. We also received an email because of a question that was asked about how the ruling on the Moms for Liberty affected us. And the written response back from our own district legal counsel said that the specific injunction that included the Moms for Liberty group was an injunction that prohibited the Department of Education from enforcing the regulations and new policy. It was not an injunction against individual school districts against enacting it. And in that same, so in other words, that's a moot point. The other thing that our lawyer came back and said is not only is that a moot point, but as Matt referenced, based on a 2017 decision in the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals that involved the school district of Kenosha against a child that brought up a complaint of discrimination, that ruling back in 2017 said that gender identity was protected under Title IX and under the 14th Amendment to the Constitution. And Boardman and Clark said that the district must comply with such rulings even in the absence of the 2024 regulations. And in the email we got for policy updates we got from Neola, they also said that in part on base of that ruling, they have always included gender identity in all of their guidelines to districts. So I've been trying to find the exact wording in what we're all referring to as the old policy, which is 2266, but I can't specifically find in there where they say that it does indeed cover gender identity, but that's the way Neola has always interpreted that policy. Regarding the Supreme Court ruling, I looked that up online and read through just some of the reporting on it. And what they said there in terms of the Supreme Court ruling is what that was, is the Supreme Court rejected a request by the White House to allow temporarily, to allow states to enforce, sorry, this is also near and dear to my heart, that the Supreme Court ruling rejected a White House request to temporarily enforce the rule in the number of states that were challenging it in court. So it's injunction, so the Supreme Court told the White House, you can't proceed while the court cases are outlining, and it kicked it back to the lower courts. It has no influence on anything going on in the state of Wisconsin right now, so that shouldn't be an issue. Thinking through things, if we don't proceed with it, at some point there's going to be consequences. So if and when the Board of Education is able to enforce this, okay, then all of our federal funds are at risk. So for this upcoming fiscal year, it's only $250,000, but that's still $250,000. Last year, it would have been $1.1 million. And when the federal government or any government entity comes back at you for funds that they gave you and they want back, I would anticipate they're going to add interest onto that. Even if I think somebody said at the last school board meeting, oh, you don't need to worry about that. The Department of Ed is now just dealing with things from 2000. No matter when they get around to dealing with it, it's going to have significant financial implications to the district if we don't put this into place. And I don't think it is prudent for us as current board members to lead a future board to have to deal with that economic impact. The other thing is I would share with Matt that I don't find anything in here that's controversial. I understand the concerns about locker rooms and sports teams, but there's nothing in this policy that has anything to do about sports teams. And Neola specifically called that out. They said that if that comes, that's anticipated down the road months from now. And when I look at this and I look at voting on something and instituting something, and there's the potential for legal risk, right? So there's the potential of legal risk if we do approve it, and there's a potential legal risk if we don't approve it, right? The potential legal risk if we do approve it is I'd much rather support a lawsuit because we followed the law. And the law of the land right now, no matter until all these court battles are fought out, the law of the land is the new Title IX. And I'd much rather have the school district be sued and have to support following the law than be sued because we did not follow the law and then we're having to justify it. Because my concern is if we don't follow the law and we don't institute the new Title IX, or which is 2264, and rely on 2266, Neola still says they include gender identity as part of that. And they've always written their policies that way. So I have big concerns about tabling this indefinitely. I was hoping we could make a decision tonight because I think it's important enough. I want to make sure that all of our students are covered and protected. Walking down that hallway to the presentation room tonight, we have all sorts of signs up about equity and inclusion and kindness. And I think not offering all of our students equal protection against discrimination is not living up to the standards we set for our students in our district. We are not being kind. We are not being respectful to all. But in the interest of the comments that were raised by the public tonight, I think I would feel much more comfortable bringing it back for a full vote next month after the public has a chance to comment on it. But I am strongly against indefinitely tabling this because I think the arguments for tabling it are weak and not supported by the law. And I think it would be fair to all board members to have the statement from the legal team rather than just to the board president when we're discussing something this significant, like the other email that came out in answer to the other questions. That's fine.
Anybody else? Any more discussion? Okay, so we have a motion on the table.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'd like to request a roll call vote.
Okay. Let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
Okay. Do we need, actually, can you restate the motion, please?
The motion on the table is motion by Chris Edson to table the proposed Title IX policy changes until the courts have fully resolved the matter. Chris Hagelin seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
Point of order, I called for a roll call vote.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay.
Chris?
Yes. No.
Tiffany, yes. Amy?
No.
Chris?
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes. Okay. All right, moving on to the Assistant Superintendent report for monthly finance.
Yes, it's me again. Let me just pull this up. So July, obviously, is very early in the school year for financials, but on page 1, you do see cash in the bank. We were sitting over, just over 5 million as of the end of July. As I mentioned earlier, we will get our last tax payment this month, so that will increase again for the upcoming month. When you look at the July statement, there's not a lot to report. Obviously, we have summer school and our 12-month staff in on these financials. Our teachers are paid out at the end of June, so they do not have salaries in July or August. So when you compare it to this time last year, we're right in line where approximately where we were at this time. Fund 21, again, that's our donations and that come in, so that does not balance. Fund 27 is our special ed. We have limited staff here at this time, so you see that that cost is pretty low, but it is balanced because we do have to keep that balance and do a small transfer. Fund 46, there's no activity at this time. Fund 50, I'm assuming that little bit of money in there was a lunch deposit. You'll see that grow over the next month as well. Fund 81, that is our child care program. They do have activity through the summer, so you will see some revenue and expenses. But she is at a surplus at this time, so.
What did you say she's at, what? I didn't hear you.
I'm sorry, and I took my mic off, I apologize. She is running a small surplus at this time.
Oh,
but she-
surplus, okay,
Yes.
thank you, sorry, I just didn't hear it.
So that looks good as well at this time. So overall, it looks like we're in the negative, but it's just because we haven't received a lot of our revenue yet for the school year. Are there any questions on the July monthly financials? Okay.
Amy, the only question I had
Sure.
is why we don't have any numbers in there under the 24-25 revised budget. When I look back at last August's finance report, we had numbers in there. So we could see how our expenditures or our income compared to what was budgeted in the percentage column. I was just wondering why we didn't have that information in there this August.
I have just not had a chance to import
Okay.
line by line.
That's fair.
But it will be done. Yes.
You just had a few other things on your plate.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
But it will be by next time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Future board or committee action or discussion items. I have one, and I've brought it up previously, and I realize we have a lot on our plate right now with strategic plan and whatnot, but I feel it kind of goes with some of the wellness stuff that I would like to explore for the strategic plan, is the school lunch situation.
To clarify, do you mean in terms of free lunches or do you mean in terms of
Completely,
options?
like global, like in general, we can explore that. I don't think the food we serve is healthy in the least bit. The kids are coming in and eating Fruit Loops and Pop-Tarts, which are completely toxic. And we wonder why kids have behavioral issues, and they're ingesting all these dyes and everything else and living off of sugar. Like, there's an opportunity here, I think, to be pretty innovative and maybe be leaders in this, because I think it's important to the overall wellness of the student, and I think it will affect their performance. But I'm having a hard time, I've been trying to research it, and I'm having a hard time finding information on it.
In terms of what's offered to our students, the nutritional content?
Just in terms of contracts, who's available for them, how it works into free and reduced, things like that, so.
Well, Tina did share that she wants to help get strong students, so I guess that fits in with it. We should look at that part of it.
Anybody else have a couple of other suggestions?
I did have one, actually.
Yeah.
So given all of the conversation with Title IX, there was at the last WASB conference I was at, there was discussion with some of the districts on a resolution that's being put forth by New London. I'm gonna read it so the public can have it and hear it, but I'm gonna pass one out to each of you as well. And the reason that I'm bringing it up and asking that it might be considered for the September meeting is that it goes to the WASB resolutions and the WASB team on whether or not they support lobbying for the lawmakers to support this type of resolution. Their resolution reads, Madam Chair, do I have the permission to read it for the public? So that they know what I'm requesting?
Yes.
Thank you.
Just no discussion, guys.
No discussion, nope. I just want to have visibility to it. New London's resolution to protect Title IX in K-12 public education and save women's sports. The resolution reads, whereas the participation of biological males in female teams in K-12 educated has caused a large perception across the country of unfairness in female sports competition. Whereas Title IX passed in 1972 by a large majority and signed into law, was enacted to create a more equality of opportunity for girls and women. Whereas the participation of biological males in female sports, identifying as females, has caused many female athletes to be pushed out of higher placements for awards and qualifications. Whereas many states in the United States of America have enacted legislation to protect women's sports by barring biological males from playing on all female teams, be it resolved that the Wisconsin Association of School Boards supports legislation for our state government to prevent biological males from competing in all female sports.
Okay. So do you wanna, just for the new guys, do you wanna explain the resolution stuff that's coming for September?
Sure, so what ends up happening is proposals are submitted to WASB, the Wisconsin Association for School Boards, to be considered from districts. And if adopted by the Wisconsin Association of School Boards, they then form their lobby group to work with the state legislators to enact their proposals into law. So it's school districts proposing to WASB to say, hey, we believe this should be a law. Can you help advocate for us to the state lawmakers to get it enacted as law? And so resolutions are submitted to them. They filter through, their lobby groups they choose the ones that are selected by the WASB delegates, and then they present those to the state legislation.
And the delegate, which is Amy, will be at the state convention to vote for.
In January.
Yeah, to vote for those. Or not vote. So that's what he's asking to put on for the next agenda.
This isn't discussed, he's asking us to basically raise our hand and say, yes, we want you to do this, basically get on the list of people that are supporting this.
If we're
Is basically what it is.
Right, he wants to get it on the agenda for us to discuss if we as a board want to support the resolution.
Correct. What does it mean if we support it?
It means when I go to the WASB convention in January, and I'm there to present the board's opinion on any.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it doesn't mean it's getting passed or anything like that, it just means our board is going to be supporting it, so. Okay, anything else?
Did you have any? Okay, I had a couple. One was update on students' fees and lunch balances from the end of last academic year.
Okay.
I know that was something we've been working on through finance and just wondering where we wound up at the end of the year on that. As I mentioned during the personnel report, a follow-up later on in the fall after we've had the first couple of months under our belt to see how we're doing. Just to make sure we're meeting we're being compliant with all of our IEP minutes. Third issue is I know we're all hopeful we're gonna have an increase in numbers for open enrollment in. I'm always worried about class sizes as well. And so hopefully once we have that third Friday in September number of students, we can just kind of get data back on what our actual class sizes are. And then at some point, maybe later on in the fall, when things have settled down a little bit more about the start of the school year, as I'd really like to take a look at like the 10-year trend of our district to see what our class sizes have been. And I choose 10 years rather than 5, because 5 years, we're gonna have variance from COVID. But just to get a sense, because we always want to be cognizant of that, and I know the admin is, but also that's part of the reasons why families open enroll in or out.
Okay.
So those are my 3.
Amy, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
I was typing to try to catch up and I missed your first 2. Just give me a bullet or something.
Follow up on outstanding student fees and lunch fees from the end of last academic year. Because we still had an outstanding balance of like 35,000, I think, the last time I remember us discussing that, so just wanted to wrap up on that.
Thank you.
And then the second one was just a follow-up on what I brought up during, when I pulled out the personnel report, just since we didn't hire another special ed teacher, just making sure that we get a report back in say like 2 to 3 months as to how we're doing in terms of IEP compliance.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Okay. Let's go to future meetings, PPC.
Amy, your Mondays and Fridays, right?
Except remember, I'm gonna be down those first 2 weeks of September because of my sister's surgery. So I'll be in the West Coast time zone, which is 2 hours behind us. So a morning meeting, I apologize, is not gonna work because I'm not gonna be up at 4 or 5 a.m. to discuss PPC with you. Now, her surgery's on the 5th, so the week after that, if you wanted to hold one, I can virtually tag in as long as we can get that setup done. I'll have a laptop with me and all of that.
Are you ready for the date?
Sure.
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th? Oh, I like that. Can I wear a costume?
You want me to do it again? Friday the 13th.
Okay, Friday the 13th, what time you thinking?
I can be open on that day. I can make it work.
Rest of the teams? Okay, so you're open?
I can be open.
So if we did 1 o'clock here, that would be 11 o'clock there?
Yeah, we can do that.
Or do you want to push it more towards the end or the beginning of the day for your work
1 o'clock's
schedule?
okay. Take a lunch at that time.
Okay, yeah, so 1 o'clock here,
Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th?
We'll do a virtual, right, for you?
Yeah.
Okay.
9:13 at 1 o'clock here. Okay. Put that in my phone now before I forget.
Okay. Finance?
Because can you do 9 a.m. on the 9th?
Yeah.
That's the Monday, yeah.
Dang, that was easy.
We're efficient.
I don't want to.
We have that.
That's the beginning of the 10th.
Not the 9th, September 9th, the Monday.
September 9th, what time?
9 a.m.
9 a.m. Thank you.
Does it work for you? No, okay, just checking. We do that.
Okay, we have the welcome back staff breakfast Tuesday, August 20th. North Library ribbon cutting, August 27th at 11. Obviously, board members, you are all invited to those things. As you know, the notices are going out automatically with that there may be a quorum, so you don't need to RSVP. And then school board meeting, Monday, September 16th, 6:30. Is that good for everybody?
Is there anything before?
September 9th, strategic plan workshop.
Is that, an overview?
Yes.
September 9th, strategic planning work.
And Tina, if we could please have that set up for virtual attendance, because I'll be up in Canada.
What
Thank
time
you.
is that workshop?
I'm looking at the calendar, yeah, just.
5 to 7.
Thank you. It's in here, so. You can tell I'm a little short, short-tempered.
Let me know when you're ready.
Good.
Okay, that concludes our meeting. We need to roll call into closed.
Madam Chair, I'd like to motion to go into closed session on matters set forth pursuant to state statutes.
I'll second that.
Okay, Chris?
Yes.
Yes.
Stephanie, yes. Amy?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Just out of curiosity, and obviously I haven't been on the board in a long time, after the annual meeting, we always had to read the minutes out loud and approve them at the annual meeting, because they couldn't be approved until the next annual meeting. So I'm not sure.
I reached out to Boardman and Clark on that. In fact, I gave him both of our agendas for this evening just to ensure that we were within the law, and his recommendation was not to do that because we have 2 new board members, and there would be no way to verify whether or not that was accurate with those 2. I can read it.
Oh, no, I mean like after the annual meeting that happened tonight, we usually took a little 5-minute break, put together the minutes, and then it was read at the meeting and then voted on. So.
Yeah, there's
Because
nothing
otherwise,
wrong
how and when are the minutes gonna be posted for the annual meeting? Because they have to be approved before they're posted, right?
They don't, so, you do not have to do a reading and approval of the annual meeting minutes. This year's group of electors is different than last year's group. What would happen if someone challenged the accuracy?
Yeah, but that was for last year's minutes.
Please wait, I am continuing on, thank you. The clerk was authorized to take the minutes. There is no requirement that the electors subsequently approve them that evening. Plus, if you want to get technical, the vote to approve the minutes would need to be included in the minutes along with the motion. Easiest just to eliminate it. That's directly from Brian. I don't know if you want to read it.
No. So when would they get published then?
As soon as we get them together. and
Oh,
get
so
them
they'll
out
be
there.
published, there's no need to
There's no need to
vote.
vote.
Right, yeah, no, they'll be
Scott.
published.
It's not necessary.
And then last year's minutes?
I can do a
I'll send
record
you
request
a
for you.
records
Yeah,
request.
that'd be great, thank you.
Yep, all right, thanks.
There was also cake last year. I don't see any, but maybe it's closed meeting cake, enjoy the cake.
All right.
You got the sign-up sheet for that, Ben.
Everybody,
I feel like
microphones
we're
off if we're going into closed before you forget.
Really fast.
Really badly.
Does anyone else need to go?